evening, and welcome back to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And tonight we are doing in our next segment a continuation of the strange and the terrifying, the mysterious and the awful. And of course, that means we are looking at curses. Now, as we begin our little bit of a go around, our examination of what we are looking at and why, and we move around the world to consider the truly terrifying, I'm going to remind you of the rules and regulations of our little live, which is to say, welcome to everybody. You are all most welcome to believe, disbelieve, and have any opinion that you like in terms of what we discuss. But I do remind you we have one rule on the channel, which is to say that we expect you at the very least to be polite. And those who are not polite shall, of course, be getting the proverbial boot, because we do expect a certain amount of politeness. Other than that, welcome to everybody. I do hope that you will offer a great many likes to the live, give plenty gifts, subscribe, share, do all the amazing things that we need you to do to make the channel work, and all the rest of these great and wondrous things. But then as we begin, let us remind ourselves whereof we speak. And we are talking about curses. Are they real? Are they not real? Should we be worried about them? Or do we not need to care at all? Well, first of all, we have been talking about kinds of curses. And we have established from our research, most interestingly, that in fact curses count as a kind of prayer. They are just like a blessing. But of course, they are the exact opposite of a blessing. So, whereas a blessing would be wishing good things upon the recipient, of course, curses wish malevolence. So, welcome to the Emperor's Son. It is awesome to see you back again. I hope you are in extremely fine form, sir. I missed seeing you around. And welcome to all the rest of you as well. So, we have discovered that you get curses that can be put upon a person by themselves. There are curses which are protective, which are contingent, generally along the lines of as long as you don't do something, then you will not be affected by it. And there are also curses which are directed specifically. Yeah, I'm in fine and fabulous form as always, surviving the cold, thank goodness. So yeah, it's good stuff. But now we are going to add another set of rules, as it were, to what makes curses curses. And those are the difference between ones which are specific to an individual, ones which are to a group. Many thanks for the heart there. That's awesome. And the third category are generational, which means that people down the line can be affected, apparently, for something somebody did before. Now, of course, in our last live, we encountered a couple of all of those types, and we shall look on them again. Curses, of course, have been around for as long as human beings have held belief in and pondered the supernatural world. Vengeful gods, maligned spirits, angry people, and more have been summoned throughout human history to inflict misfortune. And you can find evidence of people using curses to ward off wrongdoers, impose retribution for bad acts, or for no acts at all for that matter, as far back as ancient Sumerian culture some 6,000 years ago. Archaeologists have found them carved into the walls of tombs such as those in Egypt to deter thieves, and religious texts going all the way back to the Vedas, the Bible, and the Quran, all have curses. And interestingly enough, it seems that the gods of all of those have been known, in fact, to hand on a curse, either directly or indirectly. So we can say that they are a thing. Whether or not they are a real thing is another question, but they are a thing. And we are examining how they work. Now, another set of distinctions on these things is that they can be, shall we say, person to person, which is to say, I could do one on you. Now, this you may be argued that it would be via the agency of something, a deity or supernatural being of some variety. Phoenix Flux, welcome, welcome, welcome. But ultimately, what we are saying is it's me to you. The second version would be directly from said supernatural being, such as God, to the individual or individuals. So there is that. I'm very glad you're interested. It's a channel for the supernatural of all kinds. We previously went through ghosts and cryptids, and now we are on to curses, and I'm sure we will have many more interesting topics to discuss, Phoenix, to give us something to talk about. The third version of curses is objects. And this isn't in terms of so much as like on the tombs, where that's just a written down version thereof. Phoenix Flux, you're right, and I'm about to get to that, so hold that thought. You will find that there are certain specific items considered to be cursed. For example, as we saw in the last live, the Hope Diamond. It's a thing that is cursed and has effect rather than something spoken at. And those ones do almost always to tend at least to be contingent. Now, Phoenix Flux brought up a very interesting point. Not a lot of people will talk about this. And this is one of the great mysteries because by and large, A great many texts, whatever your faith might be, do confirm, yes, curses are real, they exist, absolutely. We know that God in the Bible did put down curses. We know that throughout the Christian history, certain important figures did speak of and mention curses, from Jesus to varying saints and so on and so forth. We know that in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it is in one of the Vedas somewhere, Shva did indeed speak a curse upon. I forget the exact thing. It may come up again. I think I've got it noted. But we know that deities do, absolutely. So, okay. But things apparently can become cursed, and in different ways. So we are going to start looking at a number of cursed things and what they might actually imply, and whether or not we do need to worry about them. Now, somebody brought up when I was talking about this a very interesting fact, and they said to me, no, they don't believe in curses. And I said, okay, well, it's absolutely fine. Not everybody does. Fine. And I said, but you're a Christian, are you not? And they said, well, yes. And I said, well, you believe in blessings, don't you? And they said, well, yes, they do believe in blessings. And I said, well, a curse is exactly the same. It's just malevolent instead of benevolent. If you believe in one, you must believe in the other. To which they replied quite fairly, but yes, God will protect me. Aha, now, that may be true. However, it doesn't negate the existence of or the power of the curse, merely that you have protection from it. Now, of course, that then does imply what kinds of protections are there, uh, and this is going to depend very greatly on your particular religion, your beliefs, and so on and so forth. So that's another whole section, so to speak. But it doesn't negate the reality, such as it is, of the curse or its power. So, in effect, we can almost say that unless you are an absolute hardcore total atheist that believes in nothing supernatural at all, you kind of have to believe in curses because you believe in blessings. Which means the only people who can really say that curses don't exist at all are absolute hardcore, if it's not totally proved by science it doesn't exist, atheists. Now, that doesn't mean, just to be clear, that you are not protected from such things. A great many religions will say, absolutely, God will protect you. Perfectly reasonable. And indeed, many prayers that are prayed in quite a few religions do include versions along the line of protect me from evil, which implies that, yes, we know it's out there. We are expecting some form of protection because of our faith, which is absolutely reasonable. But nevertheless, the curses remain. So let us see. And one very interesting one, which proves the point of not specifically a cursed object, but rather the transcription of a curse, just to make the difference, so to speak, is the Björktorp runestone found in Scandinavia. And now we know in Scandinavia there are quite a number of historic runestones engraved with a number of different texts, some of which do include curses. Now, one of the most famous of these is in Sweden, and that is the Björktorp runestone erected sometime around the 6th century BC, no, ACE. My apologies. So about the year 600. It's about 14 feet in height. And on one side of the rune is transcribed the phrase, I see perdition. And on the other side is transcription that speaks to the power of the creator of the rune. It indicates that anyone who disturbs or breaks the rune stone will be cursed to insidious death and destruction. Now, the runestone is still intact, and this is a very, very good example of a contingent curse, because the curse has never activated, quite literally, because nobody has done the thing it is contingent of. So maybe it's real, maybe it's not. We'll never know until somebody goes and breaks the runestone, which is the contingency for it to activate. And perhaps it is sufficient, as is often the case with these kind of contingent curses, that you could kind of say it worked because nobody did it. It's only if somebody went ahead and did it that it would not necessarily work or not work. Take it as you will. Now, there we go. The curse of Shiva. According to ancient Hindu texts, probably from around the 4th century, I'm no expert, but Brahma and Vishnu had an argument about which deity was more powerful. During this disagreement, a giant Shiva Linga appeared. Basically, it's like a giant pole, which is symbolic of various things. Thank you very much to Dr. Bron for all the awesome likes. We always appreciate likes and need many of them to keep this channel going. Now, when it appeared, Shiva then asked the two deities to measure the true length of the linga, and whoever could do this the quickest would be proclaimed the superior of the two. Vishnu immediately understood that this was a test by the most powerful Shiva, and his might and omnipotence could never be measured. However, Brahma, desperate to prove his primacy over Vishnu, lied to Shiva and proclaimed that he had found both ends of the linga. Because of the lie, Shiva cursed him that no one would worship him, and to this day there are no Hindu holidays to celebrate Brahma. The curse, therefore, it appears, worked. So, now, of course, whether or not you believe in all of that is entirely up to you, and what you may learn from it depends on your faith or lack thereof in Hinduism, of course. But be that as it may, it shows the point made. Moving on to another rather interesting one. A lot of you guys know in general, I'm sure, that 13 is an unlucky number. Have either of you ever considered why? Why do people say 13 is unlucky? And most importantly, why is Friday the 13th unlucky? Anyone want to take a guess, or perhaps you do know? Because it's actually a very interesting historical thing. And yes, it connects to a curse. Anybody got an idea out there? No? Well, let me tell you. The curse is actually known as the Curse of the Knights Templar. Now, for those of you who didn't know, Who were the Knights Templar? Well, originally they were this. As we know, at a point in history, you had what were called the Crusades, where a great many European knights went to rescue Jerusalem from the infidel, i.e., non-Christians at the time, which you may take or whatever as you feel so moved, but history is history. And there were a number of bands of soldiers that went on down to do this. There were some, however, which became very famous, including, for example, the Knights Hospitaller, who were actually doctors and physicians. Consider them to be a field medic in modern days terms. And they went down to basically aid people and to give healing. And they became very famous. But one of the groups were the Knights Templar. Now, they became really quite a powerful group, and there were problems with this. And the problems was this. At the time, the King of France was broke. But you see, and here is the bit that matters, because let's face it, how many arguments come down to money? The Knights Templar, having done a great deal of work going through and sacking so-called infidel places and carrying off the gold, were very rich. And the king felt that those riches, would be better off as mine. So here is why Friday the 13th is unlucky. So, in the early 14th century, King Philip of France was displeased with the Knights Templar funding his war against the English. And here is a typical royal reason. The reason he was not pleased with them was because he didn't want to pay them back. So on Friday, October the 13th, 1307, King Philip, in collusion, mind you, with Pope Clement V, launched a surprise attack, wiping out the Knights Templar. That's probably pretty nasty, and you do need to know that over history, not all of the popes were quite as holy as you might think. Politics was a big deal. However, you see, the king did not escape retribution. So the leader of the Knights Templar was Jacques de Molay, and he was imprisoned and tortured over the course of 7 years and then ultimately burned at the stake. But before his public execution, de Molay cursed the king and the pope to die quickly, and further cursed the house of Capet to destruction. Two kinds of curses. One, directional, person to person, at the king and the pope. Two, generational, on the house of Capet. Now, what happened? Well, from this curse on Friday the 13th, both Pope Clement V and King Philip died mysteriously within a year. So it seems that de Molay had a bit of juice to his curse. Furthermore, just to make things even more interesting, all 3 of King Philip's sons died within the next few years, as did his only male grandchild. And as a result of that, the French crown went to the House Valois, bringing the end to the reign of House Capet. So it seems that the head of the Knights Templar succeeded in his curse. And of course, to this day, Friday the 13th is still considered a dark and unlucky day, not only for the Pope and the King, etc., but because out of greed they did evil on that day, and thus the day is said to be indelibly marked. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. But moving along, Santeria. This is a particular religious system that borrows a lot from Afro-Cuban and Catholic traditions. It focuses on bringing the divide between the physical world of people and the spiritual world of orishas together. These spiritual beings, according to the belief system, can bestow blessings and curses alike through rituals performed at altars, which are thought to create a portal between the two realms. Now, practitioners of Santeria employ dances, blood rituals, sacrificial animal rituals, and more to commune with their spirit guides and request their assistance and guidance. Now, most practitioners say these practices are only done for the benefit of the community. Others believe that it's still necessary on occasion to use, a judicious curse. Is it true? Well, I suppose that would depend entirely on your belief. However, here again you see directed curses because specifically the orishas aren't the one, well, they might be the means by which, but the ones wanting the curse and the ones getting cursed, it's person to person by and large. So we see this fits to the standard version of curses. Now, the next one bridges yet another gap. Now, we've spent a huge amount of lives and more discussing ghosts and cryptids, and ghosts, of course, are a great topic that we enjoyed very much and we'll probably come back to, but we are going to come back to it right now briefly. Now, you might say, why? Well, we all know about La Llorona, the famous white lady, which turns up, of course, in a huge number of different countries and cultures throughout the world, all explained in much the same way. And here is the basic background of, well, La Llorona comes obviously from the Spanish folklore, but you will find the same thing by a different name in a lot of cultures, from Japan to Ireland and more. So the most common story speaks of a beautiful woman who marries a man but does not truly love him. They have two children, generally in most of the stories. Why, we don't know. But it sets the basic tone, if you will. The marriage deteriorates, there is no love, and one day the lady sees her husband out with another woman. Enraged, the first woman grabs said children and drowns them. And because of this deed, and overtaken by grief, either she is killed by her husband or she kills herself, whatever, but because of the evil deed, she becomes cursed. So, yes, a ghost, but specifically one created by a curse. And thereafter, as we know, she roams near water looking for her children and possibly trying to steal more, um, or trying to seduce and capture men to drag them to their death as a result of her anger, etc., and more. But again, it is nevertheless not only a haunting, it is absolutely also a curse. So we have yet more varieties. Now, here is another one which is quite weird, and we wonder where it comes from, but we all know about it. Um, and you've probably heard it yourself. Break a mirror, 7 years bad luck. And you might, of course, immediately ask, but why? What a weird sort of thing. Where does that come from? Why on earth would that happen? Well, it really does come from somewhere. And in this case, it comes from ancient Rome. Now, in ancient Rome, Romans believed that the human soul renewed itself every 7 years, repairing whatever damage was suffered during that time. And they also thought that a mirror's reflection was a way to see into a soul. Now, this, of course, is important because when you put the two beliefs in together, if you break a mirror, you break apart your soul, and therefore it will take 7 years before it renews itself. So until you get that, you will have a broken soul. And because it is broken, you will therefore suffer ill health, misfortune, and more. And that is why they say break a mirror, 7 years bad luck. It's quite an interesting story right there. What kind of curse is that? Well, I would say probably a self curse, even if accidental. Now we need to talk about the next version, as it were, dolls. Now we all know about voodoo dolls, but dolls are not merely voodoo. They are basically a focus effigy, and the idea is to create a link between the effigy, the doll, and the person, with the understanding thereafter that whatever I do to the doll will happen to the person it is an effigy thereof. This can be found in English cultures, in Slavic cultures, in African cultures, pretty much world over. However, there are a couple of rules, interestingly. To be properly effective, you need to contain within said doll the target's names, and you then have to do varying things to it that may or may not be specific. For some, you could just twist the arms and the legs around to impede. For others, sticking pins or nails. In many cases, it had to be placed in a grave or near the target's home. And in some cases, it had to be specifically dedicated to a particular deity of some kind. And then you had to allow the person cursed to know that they were. And some, of course, especially those who are skeptics, will immediately tell you that, fine, but you're just using psychology. Well, maybe, maybe not. But if it works, who's to say? Hey there, Avril. Now, our next one is another historical. Dido's curse upon Troy. Now, this comes from Roman mythological heroes. The curse on Aeneas by his once lover Dido. And of course, this goes straight along to something that I think there is a version of this saying in every culture ever. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Well, Aeneas, according to legend, was the son of the Trojan prince Anchises and the goddess Venus. He was a legendary hero of the Trojan War, as well as the ancestor of Romulus and Remus, who were said to have founded Rome. He is considered to be the first true hero of Roman folklore. And after the fall of Troy, around 1180 BC, Aeneas wandered for a period before finding a safe harbor in Carthage, where he wed Dido, the queen of Carthage. She proposed the marriage so that they may reign over all the territory jointly. But the arrangement was under false pretenses, and at the urging of his mother Venus, a goddess, Aeneas and his company stole away in the night. Dido, however, was so enraged by the betrayal that she uttered a curse that Troy and Carthage would forever be enemies. And it seemed that this, of course, came true because it led to the Punic Wars. Another example of a directed curse. Now, of course, we have a number of biblical curses to consider, and they were quite important because they generally were visited upon the Hebrew people and relate to a person or group's relationship with God. And I think that this is very much a commonality with a great many other religious stories that speak of curses. It tends to be how it works. But these will make great examples to consider. Of course, one of the most well-known stories, even from people who are not Christian, it's generally known, broadly at least, the murder of Abel by his brother Cain. Cain and Abel were the first two sons born to the first two humans, Adam and Eve, and both made offerings to God. However, Cain became jealous of his brother when God seemed to favor Abel's offerings, and therefore he murdered his brother. To make matters worse, he then lied about it to God. But of course, God, being all knowing, he already knew that, in fact, there was duplicity and that Cain had lied. And therefore, he put a curse on Cain that all land he tried to sow would be fallow. As a result, he could no longer grow crops and was banished to wander in the lands of Nod until he finally built the city of Enoch, named after his firstborn son. Cain is said to have ended the age of innocence of humans through his wicked deeds and deceit. And some biblical scholars argue that this curse lives within all people to this day. Now, of course, I suppose you can see that this is a religious curse, and if you are not of the religion, it probably doesn't mean much in general, but this is a good example of a generational curse. It was directed at Cain, yes, but also the entire line of Cain. So, the children of Enoch and more would therefore all be affected. The next interesting one in the Bible comes from the story of the flood of Noah. And we pretty much all probably know at least the gist of it. The world was bad. God decided to wipe it out, but found Noah was one decent oak and told him, build a boat, put on so many animals, and you will survive and repopulate the world. Pretty straightforward. Now, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And after the flood and they were settling down, Noah had a vineyard where he made and drank wine. And one evening, Noah's son found his father, who had gotten completely drunk and was naked, and passed out in his tent. But Ham had looked upon his father's nakedness. Ham told his brother Japheth about this. Japheth went in with averted eyes and covered his father in robes without looking. So when Noah found out about all this, he cursed Ham's son, Canaan, and all of his followers and descendants to be subjugated as slaves to the Israelites. Now, here we have again a generational curse, and people later use the story of the curse to justify segregation and slavery for varying reasons, but it still stands as one of the more well-known curses in the Bible. Now, moving forward to the New Testament, yes, you did not know, but there were curses in the New Testament as well. Bethesda, Chorazin, and Capernaum, according to the Bible, these 3 cities are where Jesus performed many of his miracles. They are 3 cities beside the Sea of Galilee, but they were pagan, and they did not repent their old ways even after the miracles performed there. And Jesus admonished them for their lack of faith and decried that they would suffer mightily on the day of judgment, and that these 3 cities would not ascend into heaven, but instead would fall into the depths of hell. That's a pretty harsh one to come from Jesus, but there you go. So it shows that as you progress and move along, religious things do contain curses. And of course, we know about the curse of Sodom and Gomorrah, where through sinful behavior they were to suffer. Now, of course, they often will say that by doing something you activate a curse, such as with the pyramids. If you break into the tomb and disturb the pharaoh, absolutely, thank you, my love, then you will suffer the curse. So by doing, therefore. Now, you can also become cursed by not doing. And Sodom and Gomorrah are an example of this. Twin cities, and they were not doing what was supposed to be done to remain good. They were therefore considered to be sinful. Angels went to see what was going on, and they were beaten and accosted by the people of the cities. Because of their wickedness, God rained down fire and sulfur upon them and destroyed them as punishment and to serve as a warning to obey the word of God. So it seems that, yes, absolutely, there are various things in that regard that may or may not uh, affect such things. But now we've seen how these work. What we want to now talk about next are specific objects. And the topic for tonight is none other than Robert the Doll. Have you ever heard of it? I hadn't. I've heard of other cursed dolls, but I had never heard of Robert the Doll. And what is Robert the Doll? Well, Robert the Doll, in fact, is a pretty innocent little child's toy. It is a little boy doll dressed in a rather cute little sailor suit. It's rather aged now, but nevertheless in pretty good nick, and it's just a little doll. Why would this be cursed? Well, he is in America with a story that ties him to Key West in Florida. It is a handcrafted doll standing approximately 40 inches tall, dressed in a sailor suit, that was given to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto in the early 1900s. The doll, which the boy named after himself, quickly became his favorite toy. But strange occurrences then began to surround Robert the Doll. First of all, the Otto family reported hearing giggles and footsteps in the house when nobody was moving around. Furniture would move on its own. Even creepier, Robert Eugene's parents would find him talking to the doll and then a voice answering back that was not their son's. Neighbors claimed to see the doll moving from window to window when the family was not home. Even stranger, as Robert Eugene grew up, he kept the doll even into his adulthood, leading to strange rumors about his unsettling attachment to it, and, of course, the continued bizarre happenings around their home. After Robert Eugene's death, eventually, new owners of the house experienced similar eerie incidents, reinforcing the belief that, in fact, the doll was cursed. Now, interestingly, it's become a part of popular culture, inspiring varying horror stories and movies that tap into the fear of haunted dolls, and we know about those absolutely. There are all kinds. Today, Robert resides in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, displayed in a glass case, and those who visit him often leave him letters apologizing for not asking permission to take his photo, a practice that has become common due to tales of bad luck befalling those who have disrespected him. What do you think? Do we think that these indeed are? Or is it just made up? Is there something more to this? Well, it's very hard to say. Nevertheless, as we move along, let's see what other strange and slightly twisted things we might find that are objects that are cursed. Now, the idea of Robert the Doll might be something that we could take even further. Perhaps. Let's see what we can find and whether or not you would agree that there is anything to it. Maybe there's nothing to this at all, but then again, maybe there is. So, facts about Robert the Doll. Hey, Karina. Welcome, 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 welcome. As we are going on, I remind you all that all we ask is that you are polite. You may have any opinions that suit you, and you're welcome to comment as much as you like. You can agree or disagree with things, believe or disbelieve. You're welcome to do either or both. And we do encourage you to like, share, subscribe, and all of the good stuff that goes along with it. Hey there, Candace. Welcome, welcome to you as well. But Robert the Doll. So, we know Robert was originally a gift to a young boy in 1904. The boy and the doll were quite inseparable to the degree that he kept it even to adulthood. They say, but don't give a lot of evidence, really. That there might have been some connection to voodoo with Robert. Don't know. I couldn't find specifics. Now, I do know that these days visitors are warned about the potential consequences of visiting Robert. Local folklore claimed Robert caused car accidents, broken bones, job losses, divorce, and a lot of other misfortunes as well. Visitors are told you must ask Robert for permission before taking his photo, and a failure to do so often results in people going back to apologize. Many letters are sent to the museum from past visitors apologizing for not asking and begging forgiveness. How true is any of this? Difficult to say. We do know that the doll was said to be able to move objects, move itself, change its facial expressions, make giggling sounds. Now, according to some versions of the story, which are quite interesting, a young girl of Bahamian descent gave Otto the doll as a gift, but possibly in retaliation for a wrongdoing. Other stories say that the doll moved voodoo figurines around the room and was aware what happened around him. Other legends claim that the doll vanished after Otto's house changed ownership several times after his death. Others say that young Otto triggered the curse on the doll and its powers by blaming his childhood mishaps on the doll. There's a lot of story. Are any of these things true? Well, nobody knows. However, in all fairness, it's a cursed object. Now, we do know that there was one interesting story around the transfer of ownership of Robert. Following Jean Otto's death, Robert remained in the attic of the Otto house under the supervision of the new owners William and Myrtle Reuter. After a few years, Myrtle sold the Eaton Street house and moved to Von Pfister Street, taking Robert with her. In 1994, she donated Robert to the museum. But what was interesting is that he stayed in the house for generations, all the way down that time. Was it fear of Otto, of Robert? I mean, of the doll. Who knows? I do apologize for that. It appears that we had a sudden disconnect, but we are back. I do apologize for that entirely. We were talking about Robert the Doll. So it seems that we have a very, very haunted doll indeed. Now, just so you know, if you're wondering what's happened to the camera, every time we have a glitch in MidLive, it seems to ruin the video feed. I don't know why. So I do apologize for the fact that you now are not able to properly see what is going on the camera. We just have to live with it because it won't fix itself until the end of the live. But, well, all you're missing are my ugly mugs, so we're all good. So, where did the doll come from? Nobody agrees. Where is it going? Well, nowhere. We do know that it was made by a company that made dolls in Germany, at least out of Germany. We do know he has his own teddy bear. We do know, however, that it's quite possible that most of the stories about dolls that we have actually indeed come from Robert. So let's now go on to another cursed object, one which perhaps is even weirder. And for this, we are going down south to Louisiana. And on the Myrtles plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, we have a plantation which may or may not be one of the most haunted homes you can visit. They say that about pretty much every single haunted house. So make of it as you will, take of it what you will. Nevertheless, the history goes back to 1796, and it has been the center for all kinds of ghost stories and hauntings. And among the various stories, the sort of focal point is a particular mirror that stands out as causing a number of eerie experiences. According to legend, the mirror contains the spirits of Sarah Woodruff and her children, who were former residents of the plantation. It is said that they were poisoned due to a mistake in the proper burial rituals. Their souls were trapped in the mirror. Now we know from our ghost story type things that not burying somebody properly can often cause someone to stay as a ghost. Here we have them somehow cursed to be in a mirror. Now, what does this mean? It means that visitors have reported seeing handprints on the inside of the glass, strange streaks, faces looking back at them from inside the mirror. These occurrences cannot be explained as the glass is often cleaned and the room is secured. Guests also report seeing figures or shadows moving through the room where the mirror hangs. Some have even heard whispers and felt sudden drops in temperature, especially upon approaching this cursed object. Now, of course, in typical fashion, the Myrtles plantation has embraced the fame, offering tours that teach visitors about the haunted history and the legend of the mirror. But I do remind you that, as we discovered, mirrors can become portals, especially the old ones that were silver backed. And it is unwise to fool with cursed mirrors. But you may make of it as you will. Now, the next interesting one, again, is Jewish. Now, what can we say? We can say that, amongst other things, in Jewish mythology, you get a creature called a Dybbuk. A Dybbuk is a malevolent or malicious spirit, and it is possible, it seems, that they may be trapped. Now, the way to trap it is to trap it in a Dybbuk box, which keeps it from being able to go around and cause harm, because the spirit is able to haunt and even possess the living. It is not a ghost, it is a spirit. The most famous Dybbuk box gained attention because it was sold on eBay. And in fact, this inspired movies like The Possession and more, and it caught the public's imagination, as you can well imagine. The story goes that this was in fact a wine cabinet bought at an estate sale in 2001 by Kevin Mannis, who then listed it on eBay with a detailed account of the misfortunes that befell him and others who came into contact with it. Um, According to Maneth, the box was originally owned by a Holocaust survivor named Havela, who allegedly trapped the Dybbuk within it. Did they? Well, who's to say? As we troll along with this, we shall see. Owners of this rather unique cursed object have reported a series of very eerie occurrences, including nightmares, unexplained illnesses, strange smells like cat urine or jasmine flowers coming from the box. They have claimed to see shadowy figures or have electronic devices inexplicably fail around it. Now, where is this box now? Well, it's changed hands several times since its eBay listing. It was eventually acquired by Zach Bagans, a paranormal investigator and the host of the television series Ghost Adventures. The fact that people kept buying it despite its reputation is fascinating. Nevertheless, I'm just putting up a note for everybody that can't see me as to why. I do hope that everybody can at least hear me. But nevertheless, as we progress, so the Dybbuk box. You can actually go and see Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, which is displayed with his collection of haunted objects. But it is said to be so dangerous that it is kept behind protective glass to prevent any direct contact. Now, in 2021, Kevin Maneth claimed that the story of the Dybbuk box was actually a work of fiction. However, the various misfortunes absolutely did occur. So, if it was just made up, does that mean it's possible that you can create a cursed object by sufficient belief? Well, moving along. After cursed boxes, the next one, The Hands Resist Him. This is a painting created in 1972 by artist Bill Stoneham. It depicts a young boy and a female doll standing in front of a glass door with hands pressing against the glass from the other side. It's rather unsettling imagery, and it alone is enough to give anyone the creeps. But it's stories of misfortune associated with the painting that has truly cemented its reputation. It first gained attention when listed for sale on eBay in 2000. Sellers mentioned that the painting was found abandoned behind an old brewery. They also claimed, however, that the figures in the painting moved at night and even stepped out of the canvas. Owners and viewers of The Hands Resist Him have reported a range of odd occurrences, from feeling sudden intense emotions to experienced electronic devices malfunctioning by the painting. Uh, some say that it caused them to feel ill or suffer inexplicable injuries. Nevertheless, the painting sold for $1,025. The notoriety of the cursed object only grew from there. Uh, the artist, Bill Stoneham, was surprised by the stories, saying that he had intended the painting to explore the themes of childhood and the unseen forces that shape our lives, not as a haunt or curse. But nevertheless, it seems that it has grown into a curse, regardless thereof. So, the next one's even more weird. Bella's skull replica. Yep, a haunted skull. So, mystery, history, the supernatural. The replica is a model of a skull, a symbol of one of the um, haunting mysteries of the 20th century, and its journey begins with the discovery um, in the hollow of an old wych elm in Hagley Wood in England in the spring of 1943. The original skull, which was nicknamed Bella, came from a woman, and it was the press who named this after graffiti started appearing around the place, reading, "Who put Bella in the wych elm?" The mystery to her identity and how she met her fate has puzzled historians, criminologists, and the supernatural enthusiast for decades. The skull replica is a uh, connection back to what may or may not have happened, but here is the story, and you may tell me what you think. 4 teenage boys were trespassing on an aristocrat's property when they found a human skull hidden in a tree. It was April of 1943. Britain was in the midst of World War II, enduring near nightly air raids and tough food rationings. The young boys had crept into the Hagley estate in Worcestershire to hunt birds and raid their nests in order to help put food on the table. Quite understandable. When Bob Farmer climbed into the creepy limbs of an elm tree, what he thought was an egg proved to be a skull. There was, he recalled, a small patch of rotting flesh upon the forehead, lank hair attached to it, and the 2 front teeth were crooked. The boys, terrified, fearing retribution for trespassing and for uncovering a dead body, made a pact of silence. But the youngest boy could not keep the secret for very long, confessing to his father what they found in Hagley Woods. Police, of course, were contacted, and they descended on the property and found, in the hollow of a massive tree trunk, an entire female skeleton hidden away. There were very few clues for the authorities to go on except for some scraps of women's clothing and a fake gold wedding ring. But the mystery took a stranger turn when a message was scrawled on a wall in Birmingham in the middle of the night. Who put Bella down the wych elm? The case became one of Britain's great unsolved mysteries because of this. Similar messages occasionally appear around Birmingham to this very day. Locals believe the killing was ritualistic and points to witchcraft. Others insist that the woman was a German spy who was murdered when her mission behind enemy lines went wrong. The theories as to what may have happened are pretty bizarre and quite enduring. 80 years after she was discovered in the tree in Hagley Wood, the question remains, who was Bella and who actually killed her? Forensic biologists who examined the woman's body in 1943 remained haunted by the mystery for the rest of their lives. It was in 2014 when Dr. John Lund, who was 101 years old, gave an interview to the BBC about the very, very few clues that they had. It was, he said, an excellent place to hide a body, inside a tree on a remote private property where, if it wasn't for the boys hunting for food, you simply would not have encountered it. During the investigation, he noted, due to the state of her remains, the authorities concluded that the woman had likely died 18 months before she was discovered. She was about 35. Her front incisors were slightly overlapping. She may have had a baby at some time, but the evidence was not conclusive. Dr. Lunt said he and his colleagues believed she was placed inside the tree very soon after her death because rigor mortis would have made it impossible to get her into such an awkward spot. A piece of peach-colored taffeta ripped from her skirt was found in her mouth, suggesting she may have been suffocated. This has given rise to the theory that she may have been murdered, but there is debate over that. The four boys who discovered her body said they had wrapped some cloth around a stick and wedged it in her mouth when they put the skull back. Even with the victim's distinct teeth, her identity has never been revealed. Resources were depleted due to the war effort, and forensic methods available were crude at best. The description of the victim's body was compared to thousands of missing persons cases in the region, but never a match was found. And unfortunately, while a DNA test to find out more might have done a great deal, unfortunately, now that you can do it, the DNA is no longer an option. As far as I know, we gave the body to the university, he said, and then the bones disappeared. The West Midlands police since confirmed they don't have the body either. In a statement in 2018, a spokesperson revealed that they can find no documentation that may relate to this case at either of the West Midlands police museums. Despite these strange circumstances, World War II was going on and people soon forgot about it, but somebody did not want to let it go. 6 months after the body was found, a missive asking who put Bella in the Wych Elm appeared on an abandoned building near Hagley Hall. The ominous chalky letters provided the authorities with their first clue, possibly. Her name was Bella. Rumors swirled over who may have written this. An ex-lover? The murderer? Who's to say? But alas, even with investigation, the name soon proved a dead end, and the case went cold. 10 years passed, and then a local journalist using the nom de plume of Questa wrote a series of sensationalist articles about the tragedy, and the renewed publicity appeared to have paid off when a new lead came forward. A woman who called herself Anna sent the local paper, the Wolverhampton Express and Star, a letter suggesting that the one person who can give the answer is now beyond jurisdiction of the earthly courts. The only clues I can give you is that the person responsible for the crime died insane in 1942. The victim was Dutch and arrived illegally in England around 1941. I have no wish to recall any more. The letter was forwarded to local authorities who encouraged Anna to step forward to reveal more. Quester, or Byford Jones as he really was named, claimed he was sworn to secrecy about a meeting that took place between himself, the police, and Anna. But 5 years later, he wrote an account of what happened on that dark, rainy night at the Dick Whittington Inn in Kinver. The article mentioned trapeze artists, spies, munitions, and aircraft factories, and a desperate chase for Anna among the sea of girls in the inn. But it's not clear how much of the story was actually true. Authorities did, however, take a statement from one Una Hainsworth, who offered up some striking similarities to the journalist's story. Hainsworth told the police that she was the Anna mentioned in the newspapers and recalled that her husband, Jack Mossop, coming home white and agitated one night in either March or April of 1941. He told her that he had been at the Littleton Arms with a Van Ralt and a Dutch piece, presumably Bella, who passed out in the car on their way home. Van Ralt apparently told Hainsworth's husband to drive to the wood, and the pair stuck the woman in the hollow tree, believing she would come to her senses in the morning, and it being a practical joke. But Bella never woke up, and Hainsworth's husband apparently went insane, haunted by the image of the woman that then died in the tree. He died in a mental hospital a year before Bella's body was discovered. Former Birmingham councillor Peter Douglas Osborne has been following the case since the 1970s, and he came across a story after hearing about it from his father, the late squadron leader William Douglas Osborne, who was tasked with guarding the murder scene when the remains were found. He took me out to show me the site and pointed to this big tree trunk with a hollow in the middle and said, "That's where the spy's body was found." It was very exciting for a young child, but subsequently he clammed up about it. The idea that the woman may have been a spy added another odd twist to the case, and we know in World War II there were absolutely spies. So it's not unfeasible. The theory goes that Bella may have been linked to a German spy ring. There were munitions factories scattered across the Midlands at the time, and knowledge of these locations would have been valuable to England's enemies. Who's to say? However, things got weird when the UK spy agency MI5 released its wartime files on an enemy agent named Josef Jacobs, who parachuted into Cambridgeshire in 1941. He was apparently found by farm workers in a nearby field and handed over to the police. In his pocket, he carried a photograph of a young woman, later and identified as Singh. I don't know what is going on tonight, but it does seem that we are having issues with connectivity, and I apologize greatly for that. We will finish this bit up, I think, and then leave it there. Um, but in his pocket, he carried a photograph of a young woman who was later identified as singer and actress Clara Bow. The links between Clara and the woman in the wood are a little murky, but it's possible she might have been a spy, and that was Clara in the hollow tree. No parachute was ever found, however, so that possibly disproves. However, what we are interested in is the supernatural. And according to the reports, it was found, the body, in a witch elm, a tree specifically used to ward off evil and witches. The name belladonna is linked to both deadly nightshade and witchcraft since the Middle Ages. Speculation has also focused on the scatterings of bones found near the woman's body, which police thought were the result of wild animals. However, Bella's hand, it was reported, was severed, which seems to give it the hallmarks of witchcraft. Now, she reportedly traveled to the Midlands. Margaret Murray, the expert on witchcraft, archaeologist and anthropologist that she was, in the 1950s to investigate another crime with suspected occult origins, the murder of farmer Charles Walton, who was stabbed and pinned to the ground with a pitchfork. But then she heard about the Hagley Wood case, and she basically had this theory. The very act of placing the body in a hollow tree is associated with witchcraft. The cult of tree worship is an ancient one and is linked with sacrifice. The fact it was a witch elm adds to this, and it seems that perhaps it was black magic. Was it an effort, therefore, you ask, to break a curse? Was she the one causing the curse? And this was done, in fact, to break the curse by putting her in the witch elm. Well, it's hard to say. If we knew more of who Bella was, it might add to a something. Hard to say. The search for Bella and the killer has not yet been solved. All we know is something strange, very strange, happened. And it seems that the final result was not in accordance with the stories given, but something far darker. And perhaps witch elm is how you stop something wicked. Well, we don't know. It's certainly an interesting one. The very ideas that it offers are fascinating. We cannot deny there are a lot of different things that could be said. Curses are strange, and as much as they should be avoided and are things that terrify, we nevertheless know that they are integral to the human existence. And so perhaps all we can say is that something is somehow worrying about them. And that's all we can really say. And on that note, I bid you good night. I hope that tomorrow we will be slightly less troubled with our electronics and we will be able to keep this going. But until then, sleep deep, sleep sweet. But remember, sleep with one eye open and maybe keep that holy object near at hand, because you never know. Sometimes those things that go bump in the night might very, very well go bump for you.